What's going on, pervs and pervettes? It's King Perv Darth, and we're back in everybody's perv playland game, Queen's Blade Limit Break. And in this one, we're going to be going back in time again. That's right, we've gone back in time again. Why are we going back in time in this one? Because we're going to be continuing or following a series that I started a long time ago, and I intended to move through the content of that particular series a lot faster. Called Rune Skill Highlights, and I really was excited about that series. And actually, so I can't really call it a series yet, because just like a good set of boobs, you can't call it a set unless there's more than one. And I've only done one video on it, so technically it's a feature film, right? Hollywood should be paying me. So right now we have one video. I highlighted the Rune Skill Speed. And in this one, I intended to follow up that to make it an official series or set of boobs with the Rune Skill Highlight Physical and Magical Barrage. So that's what we're going to be highlighting here today. So, ladies, get your waifus ready, because we're doing it. Guys, keep your waifus in your pants, but you can watch. If she'll let you. I prefer that not, because I don't want anyone staring at my lady's hoo-ha or my tits. Anyways, let's get into it. Physical and magic, god damn it. Physical and Magical Barrage. I wish there was an easier way to get into the rune skills and things like that. There probably is. I'm just used to old school way of getting in there. I'm not going to sit here and say Physical and Magical Barrage all day. I'm just going to refer to it the way most of us do, at least on my server, as Barrage. We know what we're talking about, but just understand that there is two Barrage runes, Advanced Physical and Advanced Magical, and it depends on the type of damage that your warrior does. Warrior classification, warriors generally, we call the in-game characters warriors, but there is a mage class and a warrior class. Warrior class generally are single target DPS, but they can branch out, and they deal physical attacks. Your mages generally deal magic attacks. So there it is. Let's just read this and get into it. You have a X% chance that physical or magical, depending upon the rune you're using, attacks will be continuous. When the skill is used again, damage and immobilization rate will be reverted to 50% of the original. So there's actually a lot going on here. So let's just cover the basics. Then we'll talk statistics, and then we'll round it out. First, the name and the description is very misleading. Advanced Physical Barrage and continuous. The reason I say that is because barrage technically meaning a flurry of or continuous hits. That's what a barrage is to me. And it actually says continuous. Now, that's not entirely accurate. So all this rune does is it allows you, when you hit with a direct attack, I'm going to clarify some things here. When you hit with a direct attack, whether it be a skill-based attack, which is generally deals physical or magical damage anyways, or a normal attack. A lot of people are confused about this. A normal attack counts as a direct attack, and it is inherently physical or magical, dependent upon what your warrior actually does. A normal attack can trigger barrage because it is either physical or magical. Now, there are some cases where a warrior might trigger something else, depending upon whether or not you have a, like a core or something, or a beast equipped where you can do cross warrior type skill damage. You can do magical damage on a physical warrior if you trigger it via core or beast or something like that. But inherently, again, it's important to understand that normal attacks are actually physical and magical. So when you read descriptions that say that on your warriors, that's why normal attacks actually trigger this. So it has to be a direct attack. It can't be a follow-up attack. Follow-up attacks, although physical and magical, don't actually trigger barrage, oddly enough. Think Break. Break has a lot of warriors that do counterattacks, follow-up attacks, and things like that don't actually trigger barrage. So you have a percent chance to be continuous and barrage. Now, I'm going to say this, and you can disagree or not. This only triggers once. This is why I have a problem with the wording here. It is not a barrage, it's not a flurry of hits, and it is not continuous. It is one extra attack. So basically consider it a follow-up attack. Now people are very, very confused about this. Last year, I would say around August or September, I was recording a fight. I'm almost 100% positive I saw it go off again. I have never seen this go off with proof more than one time. So hit me up in the comment section. Have you seen Barrage trigger more than once? If not, then just take it with a grain of salt, because I'm 100% positive that it is not continuous and it is not a barrage. When you hit with a direct skill or normal attack and this goes off, it happens once and then it's over. If it doesn't, and if it's not intended to work that way, there's got to be some coefficiency rate in the background that reduces this 40% chance back down to 1 to not make it overpowered. The problem is this rune is overpowered to begin with. This is one of the most used and most sought after rune skills. No matter what warrior you're using, whether it be a support most of the time, DPS, or even a tank. And it's because of what this actually does. When you trigger a skill attack, you have a chance to perform a debuff. You may buff up your allies. You may apply a status ailment. A status ailment may be like burns, curse damage, things like that. So when you trigger an attack and it has an X% chance to trigger a burn or something like that, and Barrage triggers, it has every capability that that skill-based attack has. You have another, think of it as another chance to perform a debuff, perform an attack. Another chance to perform a application of a, they call it continuous damage in this game, not status ailments and things like that. And if you perform a CC effect, it gives you another chance to do that, so long as the skill that triggered it has that capability. This is what makes this rune extremely powerful and extremely dangerous. In fact, I think it is overpowered. I think that it needs to be changed. I think there's a lot wrong with this rune. I don't think it was intended for the use that it is. Let's read the second part of this again. When it triggers, and you go in and do your follow-up attack, basically, the damage and the immobilization rate, or also known as CC rate, is actually 50% less. And a lot of people are led to believe, well, okay, well, you're doing 50% less damage. It can't be all that powerful. That is not true. Not in today, and same thing with the immobilization rate. This is not true. This is, again, what enhances the power of this particular rune. If you have a 100% immobilization rate, and you go in, and you hit somebody, and then you trigger a follow-up attack, and you go in and get another chance to CC them, 50% of 100 is still 50%, which is really high. That's a high rate to CC again, making it very sought after in PvP to immobilize your enemy. And yes, if your enemy has immobilization resistance, you have to factor that in too, but still, 50% of a high number is still 50%. It actually performs quite well. Now let's talk about the damage numbers for a second. On a normal hit, let's just say your attack value allows you to hit for 100,000, and instead of the traditional 150 crit rate, let's just say you do 200. You go in and you don't crit on an attack, you do 100,000 damage. Okay, fine. We're not even going to factor in defense. If you crit at 200%, you're going to be doing 200,000 damage. So you have 100 on a normal and 200 on a crit. Then you go in and hit with Barrage. Okay, let's say you do a normal attack, 100,000. You go in with Barrage, and it hits for 100,000. It doesn't crit. You're still doing 50,000 more damage. So on a normal attack, you're doing 150 instead of 100. And you're adding that to the damage you already did. 200% crit rate on a attack that goes in and hits again. So let's say you go in, you do your Barrage hits, you already got 100,000, right? You do 50%, let's say it crits, you do another 100,000 damage. That's still 200,000 damage or so that you're doing. It really is insane. Let's say you critted on the first one, you do 200,000. You go in and crit on Barrage. That's still adding another 100,000 to your 200,000 crit. That's 300,000 damage. When you compare that with the numbers on the Advanced Anger rune of 30% extra crit damage, there's a lot that goes into comparing these two. And the damage value in here, most players agree that even at a 50% reduced rate, with the amount of attack and attack value you can get, this rune is extremely overpowered. Now I'm going to say something that's controversial here. I don't think they intended this to be a DPS usage. That's why it reverts damage back down 50% and immobilization 50%. I think they intended this to be for warriors to apply burn effects and other effects, because when you go in and attack, you still have a percent chance to inflict these particular aspects. The problem is when the game first started, those aspects were a bit lower, so Barrage really helped with that. Attack values are nowhere near, and they've scaled way too high and too quickly nowadays, that this rune just benefits ever more from that. That even taking the Advanced Anger rune for the extra crit damage here actually is less attractive unless you pair it with Barrage. So when you do the numbers, now that 40% chance here is actually triggers quite often. Taking advantage of the Advanced crit damage rune here actually is dependent upon whether or not you have enough crit rate and your opponent doesn't have enough crit resistance anyways. And let's face it, getting enough crit rate to consistently be effective is an advanced game mechanic that new players, that all the way up to even intermediate players, still don't have to rely on to make taking that Advanced Anger rune just valuable. This rune right here is not being used for its intended purpose, and yes, there is a bit of speculation there, but I can read and kind of compare it to what the game was and what it is now. Chance to apply burn effects and stuff like that is actually slightly higher than it was before. It's almost guaranteed, in fact. That's just me. I do not like this rune. That being said, I use it. I would be a fool not to use it. Some might also say, well, the other 60% chance. Again, taking crit damage and not using Barrage hinders your ability to apply extra damage via your burns and things like that, but also keep in mind you want to immobilize your enemy. You want to apply a buff. If a skill applies a buff, you have another chance to apply it. Or a debuff, you have another chance to apply it. It's too valuable not to pass up. Now you can pair it with the crit damage, but 60% chance not to activate. If your crit rate is where it is when you become a grown-up player, maybe you can sacrifice this and go for Advanced Anger. Would not recommend that. There is a counter to this rune, though. It's called Advanced Holy Body. See if I can actually find it here. What Advanced Holy Body does is it gives you 30% or a Divine Body damage from enemies with physical and magical barrage negative 30%. This is another rune that I think everybody should have because defense has been scaled back and ignored largely, where they're focusing on damage resistance. This is not 30% less damage when magical barrage triggers. This is actually 30% less damage from any warrior on any attack. If you don't believe me, go in and actually watch a fight. I was watching a high level attribute like 1400 tower, and I was seeing this Advanced Divine Body go off on the enemy, and it's because they have it. When I was triggering any attack, they were taking 30% less damage. So if you pair that with the 50% damage reduction here, you can actually counter this rune quite handily. And actually Divine Body is used by a lot of players, and it's one of the better kept secrets if people aren't paying attention. This rune should be something that everybody aspires to use very early on. It's not, unless they rework this rune, people are going to continue to use it for the DPS power that it has, the ability to consistently apply or give extra chances to apply buffs and debuffs, that it will always be a staple unless they tone it down. And I do think that they should tone it down. Again, that being said, it's one of the most important runes that you can have on almost every one of your warriors. That's why it's heavily invested into it. What do you guys think? Is it overpowered? Should it be reworked? In fact, I think all these runes should be reworked. We haven't had an update to these skills in the current meta. The game has changed a lot. They could add several new runes to this particular list of objects. Now the gold standard here is what you want to aspire to. Purple's okay, but it's far less effective. You want to get up here and get these orange runes at all costs, especially when it comes to the Barrage rune skills. That's it, guys. That's all I have. I hate to say it. It's a rune that everybody loves to hate and hates to love. That's all I can say. It's the most popular, even over speed, because some warriors you can get away with not using speed. But when you pair this with the crit damage rune that I talked about, as well as ignoring defense of 33% when it comes to that particular rune skill on a straight DPS, you have a recipe for massive, massive destruction. That's all I got for you guys. Let me know what you guys thought. Like, comment, and subscribe. See you later.